Prophecy. This video tells the epic story of a leader who defied the odds, overcoming exile and adversity to reclaim his rightful place. From the ashes of defeat to the pinnacle of power, join the journey of Biafra's exiled hero as he rises to power. Driven by the flames of discover the untold story of a hero who refused to back down. What drove him to greatness? What challenges did he face? Find out in this gripping tale of courage, perseverance, and the unrelenting pursuit of destiny. Opening narrative, striking statistics, question. Did you know that over 3 million lives were lost during the Biafran War? An entire generation silenced in the pursuit of freedom. Yet decades later, the land of Biafra remains a fragmented dream, led by voices seemingly trapped in cycles of division and despair. What if the answer to its revival lies not with the leaders of today, but with an exiled hero born of an ancient prophecy? Enter the tale of Ekemma Nnamdi-Ugochukwu, a figure shrouded in mystery and destiny. Cast away at birth due to circumstances beyond her control, she grew up far from the land of her ancestors. Little did the world know that her existence had been foretold long ago in Biafran lore. A savior destined to unite a fractured people and breathe life into the embers of their forgotten dreams. The setting: Biafra's current dilemma. Today, Biafra, a name steeped in history and resonant with the hopes of millions, remains a region deeply scarred by the civil war of the late 1960s. Its leaders struggle to unify a population divided across ethnic struggles, economic disenfranchisement, and international neglect. Over 50 years have passed since the war's conclusion, yet the echoes of desperation and the cries for independence are louder than ever. Corruption has plagued those who claim to chart the course for a new Biafra, and the dream of statehood appears farther from realization with every passing day. It's in this crucible of loss and yearning that an unlikely hero emerges, a woman many thought lost to the world and its conflicts. The birth of a hero. Ekemma's story begins in exile, born to parents fleeing persecution during the war. Growing up in a foreign land, far from the soil of Biafra, she knew nothing of her roots or the weight of her destiny. But whispers of prophecy had followed her birth, spreading through the villages and cities of the southeast like wildfire. Local elders spoke of the Child of Fire, a savior who would rise in Biafra's darkest hour to lead its people into a new dawn. Could it really be her? The prophecy and the awakening. The prophecy foretold of a child whose spirit, forged in suffering, would be tempered by justice, vision, and purpose. A child who would one day ignite unity where there was discord and bring peace where there was none. For years, this tale remained little more than folklore, kept alive by fringe movements and whispered on dusty streets. But as the leadership in the region continued to falter, leaving millions in poverty and without hope, the story began to resonate once more. Ekemma's awakening came during a pivotal moment in her young adult life when she stumbled upon an old artifact connected to her ancestral lineage, a family journal chronicling the horrors of the Biafran War and the hope for a future rebirth. Driven by the voices of her ancestors and the plight of her people, she decided to leave the life she knew behind and embark on an unthinkable journey. Igniting Biafra's new dawn. When the exiled Ekemma returned to a land she had only dreamed of, her presence sent shockwaves across the region. She quickly became a symbol of hope, her mere existence challenging the status quo and uniting opposing factions that had long been at odds. Unlike the leaders before her, she relied on compassion, intellect, and a deep understanding of what it means to live in both struggle and freedom. Through innovative grassroots movements, she reignited the spirit of Biafra, not through calls for violence or separation alone, but through a vision of progress, sustainability, and unity. Her approach rallied young people disenchanted by years of political stagnation. From the urban centers of Aba and Enugu to the rural villages scattered across the land, her message spread like wildfire. The final question: will Ekemma Nnamdi-Ugochukwu fulfill the prophecy and finally lead Biafra into the new dawn it so desperately needs? Or will she too fall prey to the forces that have held its people captive for decades? One thing is certain: the dream of Biafra burns brighter now than it has for generations, carried forward by the courage of an exiled hero who dared to believe in a broken prophecy. Throughout history, few struggles for freedom and identity have been as deeply etched into the collective memory of a people as the Biafran struggle. It's a saga of bravery, loss, and an unyielding determination to reclaim sovereignty, one that still resonates in whispers across the lands of southeastern Nigeria. Yet amidst the countless battles, speeches, and faded dreams of a free Biafra, one element has remained a quiet constant: prophecy. Passed down through generations, spoken in hushed voices by elders, and ingrained in the oral traditions of a resilient people, prophecy has always been a source of both hope and anticipation. These ancient tales foretold a time when Biafra, broken and oppressed, would rise again, not through politics or warfare alone, but through the emergence of a leader chosen by destiny. In Biafran folklore, the land's liberation was always tied to the concept of divine timing and an individual imbued with purpose. The elders spoke of a leader born in fire and hardship, raised in exile, and returned to lead the people when hope had nearly extinguished. This figure was said to be unlike any who came before, neither bound by tribal allegiances, nor corrupted by power. They would be a unifier, a strategist, and above all, a symbol of renewal for a people fragmented by years of internal divisions and external pressures. The struggles and the void of leadership. For decades, Biafra's leaders have been torn between opposing strategies: diplomacy, agitation, and even armed resistance. Movements have risen and fallen, each reigniting the fire of independence, only to watch it fizzle out under the weight of disunity, external interference, and political stagnation. Leaders have come forward, but few have been able to genuinely inspire hope across Biafra's diverse generations and communities, leaving the movement fractured and without a clear path. But prophecies are rarely tied to the familiar. They don't speak of restoring the status quo through the same systems and structures that have repeatedly failed. Instead, they point to transformation, a figure who will challenge norms, rekindle the spirit of unity, and revive the dream of independence with a vision unhindered by the past. A new hope on the horizon. Could it be that, in this moment of darkness, when hope for Biafra seems but a flicker, a new leader may be emerging? Whispers are growing louder across the lands, and even among the Biafran diaspora, pointing to an individual whose story feels plucked from the pages of these old prophecies. It's said they were born far from Biafran soil, raised among foreign peoples, but tied deeply to the ancestral legacy of those who fought and fell, defending Biafra's ideals. Their emergence is not attributed to coincidence, but fate, a direct answering of the prophet's words. This leader, whether they have already stepped into the public view or remain on the periphery, carries the promise of restoration, not as a return to the past, but as a bold leap into a new future. Their message is rumored to transcend the usual rhetoric of secession or revenge, centering instead on unity, prosperity, and rebuilding the social fabric of Biafra. They don't see themselves as merely reclaiming lost territory, but as reigniting the soul of a people long oppressed and rebuilding Biafra's identity, not as a dream deferred, but as a reality reborn. The weight of prophecy and the future of Biafra. Prophecies often seem like mere myths, stories crafted to provide comfort during times of struggle. But history has shown us that even myths hold power when they ignite action, inspire belief, and rally the minds of the disillusioned. For Biafra, the role of prophecy is more than a tale of divine intervention. It is a reminder of collective destiny, urging its people to keep believing, striving, and pushing forward despite overwhelming odds. As Biafra stands at another crossroads, divided as ever, but still clinging to hope, the idea of prophecy takes on new relevance. It suggests that the time may not be far off when the land hears the voice of one who seeks not to ignite more war, but to reignite a new dawn. Whether this leader is yet to emerge or already walks among the people remains to be seen. But one thing is clear. Biafra's struggles cry out for a figure who can capture the spirit of that ancient prophecy, a leader capable of uniting a fractured movement and guiding its people toward the new horizon they've spent decades dreaming of. Could this truly be the time? Could the exiled, the silenced, and the forsaken finally find their voice through a leader destined to fulfill a prophecy born in the fire of Biafra's darkest days? Only time will tell. But for now, the idea of such a figure is enough to stir hope once more in the hearts of millions. The journey of Biafra represents one of the most profound struggles for self-determination in modern African history. Rooted in deep ethnic, political, and economic tensions, the challenges faced by Biafra and its leaders highlight the entrenched complexities of post-colonial nation-building in Nigeria. From the catastrophic civil war that claimed millions of lives to the continued political struggles and exiles that have defined the Biafran movement, the story of Biafra is one of resilience, tragedy, and the ceaseless yearning for freedom. The historical backdrop. A nation divided. Biafra's challenges must be understood within the context of Nigeria's colonial past, when the British colonialists amalgamated diverse ethnic groups in 1914 to form Nigeria. They created a state rife with inherent contradictions. The Igbo people, predominantly concentrated in southeastern Nigeria, were often at odds with the political and economic dominance of the northern Hausa Fulani and western Yoruba groups. These divisions deepened after Nigeria achieved independence in 1960. Power struggles among the regionally based elite, coupled with ethnic rivalries and economic disparities, led to instability. The immediate trigger for the Biafran struggle was the massacre of tens of thousands of Igbos in northern Nigeria between 1966 and 1967, following a military coup and a counter-coup marked by ethnic violence. These killings, combined with the failure of the central government to protect Igbo citizens, forced many to flee back to the southeast. In response to these atrocities and systemic marginalization, on May 30, 1967, Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, then military governor of Nigeria's eastern region, declared the Republic of Biafra as an independent state. The Nigerian Civil War, 1967 to 1970. Catastrophic challenges. The declaration of Biafra's independence plunged Nigeria into a devastating civil war, also known as the Biafran War. The federal government of Nigeria, determined to preserve the country's territorial integrity, launched a full-scale military campaign against the secessionist state. The war, characterized by widespread human rights violations, culminated in the death of over 3 million people, many of whom were civilians who succumbed to starvation due to the federal government's blockade of Biafran territory. The leaders of Biafra faced monumental challenges during the war. 1. Economic strangulation and starvation. One of the most infamous wartime policies was the economic blockade imposed by Nigeria, which deliberately aimed to starve Biafra into submission. This strategy led to one of the worst humanitarian crises of the 20th century, with malnourished children and images of suffering dominating international headlines. Despite receiving some international aid, most of which came through clandestine airlifts into besieged Biafra, the leaders struggled to keep their people alive. 2. Diplomatic isolation. Very few countries officially recognized Biafra, leaving its leaders to navigate a hostile international environment. Although nations such as Gabon, Côte d'Ivoire, Zambia, and Haiti offered recognition, Major powers like the UK and the Soviet Union supported the Nigerian government. Biafran leaders, particularly Ojukwu, worked tirelessly to gain international support, but diplomatic efforts often fell short. 3. Internal divisions. While the Igbo people were the predominant group driving the Biafran cause, the territory of Biafra included smaller ethnic groups, such as the Efik and Ijaw, some of whom were skeptical of Igbo dominance. Managing these internal tensions presented an additional challenge for Biafran leadership. 4. Military disadvantage. Biafra's military forces, though bolstered by the ingenuity of its scientists, with innovations such as locally made rockets and weapons, were significantly outmatched by the Nigerian army, which had the backing of major world powers. The war was a David and Goliath battle, and the relentless bombings and invasions by the Nigerian forces gradually pushed Biafra to the brink of collapse. The war ended in January 1970, when Ojukwu fled into exile and Biafran forces surrendered. General Yakubu Gowon, then head of the Nigerian government, declared a policy of no victor, no vanquished, promising reconciliation and reintegration. However, the scars of the war, both physical and emotional, remained deeply etched into the psyche of the Biafran people. Exile and the post-war era. A leadership adrift. After the war, the Biafran leadership faced a new set of challenges. Many key figures, including Ojukwu, went into exile. Ojukwu, who initially sought refuge in Côte d'Ivoire, became a symbol of the cause, but the disbanded Biafran leadership struggled to organize in the absence of territory, resources, or coherent political strategy. Exile created a disconnection between the leaders and the realities of the Igbo people's suffering under post-war marginalization. For those who remained in Nigeria, the end of the war did not mean an end to persecution. Many Igbos faced economic disenfranchisement as the Nigerian government implemented discriminatory policies. One example was the absurd policy that allowed Igbos to exchange their Biafran currency for the Nigerian pound, but only at a fixed rate of £20, regardless of their wealth. Furthermore, properties owned by Igbos in other parts of Nigeria were declared, abandoned, and confiscated, compounding their economic woes. Emerging movements and continued struggles. The new generation. Over the years, the dream of an independent Biafra has endured, primarily because many Igbos feel that the core grievances that led to the war, marginalization, ethnic violence, and economic exclusion, have not been addressed. Successive Nigerian governments have often treated calls for Igbo self-determination with hostility, resulting in periods of violent crackdowns on pro-Biafra movements. Several new leaders and organizations have emerged to reignite the cause. Groups like the Movement for the Actualization of the Sovereign State of Biafra, MASOB, and more recently, the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, led by Nnamdi Kanu, have sought to renew the push for independence. However, these movements have faced significant challenges. Criminalization and brutality. The Nigerian government has often labeled Biafran advocacy groups as terrorists, employing heavy-handed security measures, including arrests, killings, and suppression of protests. Leadership fragmentation. Just as in the past, Biafran movements today struggle with a lack of unified leadership. Divisions among leaders and differing ideologies often weaken their ability to present a cohesive message or strategy. Our exile and arrests, like Ojukwu before him, current Biafran activists have frequently faced exile, imprisonment, or both. Nnamdi Kanu, for instance, has been arrested multiple times and remains a polarizing figure, both hailed as a hero by supporters and criticized for his divisive rhetoric by opponents. The lingering legacy. The challenges faced by Biafra and its leaders underscore the ongoing difficulties of carving out a distinct national identity in a landscape of entrenched ethnic tensions, economic disparities, and post-colonial power structures. For many Igbos, Biafra is more than a political movement. It is a symbol of survival, resilience, and the hope for a more equitable future. While the dream of an independent Biafra remains uncertain, one thing is clear. The historical struggles of its leaders and people continue to inspire new generations to question the status quo and demand a system where their voices are heard. Biafra remains both a wound and a beacon, a painful reminder of the past's failures and a hopeful vision of what the future might hold. Exile has shaped the lives of many leaders, but few emerge from such a condition carrying the weight of a prophecy on their shoulders. Ekemma Nnamdi-Ugochukwu, whom many would come to call the daughter of fire, was born under circumstances marked by flight and the chaos of the Biafran War. Her parents, persecuted during the conflict, sought refuge in distant lands, where Ekemma grew up unaware of her heritage of sacrifice and resistance. Meanwhile, elders in Biafra whispered of an ancient prophecy. The nation's rebirth would be guided by a figure born in exile, forged in adversity, and destined to return to unite a divided people. Ekemma's rise to prominence began almost unintentionally. In her youth, she stood out as a defender of minority groups in foreign communities, showing a natural gift for leadership and an incredible ability to inspire hope. A chance encounter with her grandfather's journal, a survivor of the war, revealed to her the magnitude of the legacy she carried. When she began sharing her visions of a renewed Biafra, her story and actions began to resonate with the prophecy deeply rooted in her homeland. The pivotal moment for Ekemma Nnamdi-Ugochukwu came during a time of great turmoil in Biafra. The region was gripped by renewed unrest, with protests escalating into violent clashes. Amidst this chaos, Ekemma organized a clandestine summit of key community leaders, activists, and disillusioned youth in the heart of Biafra. At this summit, she delivered a powerful speech that resonated deeply with the attendees. She spoke of unity, leveraging her own story of exile and return to underscore the possibility of a collective rebirth. Her words reignited the hope of a people long accustomed to despair. This gathering marked the beginning of her rise to power, as she was unanimously chosen to lead a new movement aimed at achieving true autonomy for Biafra through peaceful and strategic means. Ekemma's leadership brought about a significant shift in Biafra's future. Her pragmatic approach and inclusive vision fostered unprecedented unity among the various factions. Under her guidance, Biafra began to rebuild its institutions, strengthen its economy, and gain international support for its cause. Ekemma's rise to power, foretold by prophecy, became the catalyst for a new dawn in Biafra, one characterized by hope, resilience, and a renewed sense of purpose. Initially seen as an outsider, Ekemma's return to Biafra was shrouded in mystery. Yet her message of unity and pragmatism won over disillusioned youth and hopeless elders. To many, she is the living embodiment of the ancient prophecy, the exiled hero destined to rekindle the dream of Biafra. The journey of Ekemma Nnamdi-Ugochukwu, Biafra's exiled hero, began with her birth during the Biafran War and her upbringing in foreign lands, far from her heritage. Discovering her legacy through her grandfather's journal, she became an advocate for minorities and a natural leader. Ekemma's pivotal moment came when she organized a clandestine summit during a time of great turmoil in Biafra. Her inspiring speech about unity and collective rebirth led to her being chosen to lead a new movement. Under her leadership, Biafra experienced significant transformation, rebuilding its institutions, strengthening its economy, and gaining international support. Ekemma's rise to power, foretold by prophecy, brought hope and renewal to Biafra, marking the beginning of a new dawn for the region. We invite you to share your thoughts on the incredible journey of Ekemma Nnamdi-Ugochukwu, Biafra's exiled hero. How do you feel about her rise to power and the impact it has had on the region? Do you believe in the power of prophecy and its role in shaping history? We would love to hear your insights and opinions. Don't forget to check out our related videos on the rich and complex history of Biafra. Dive deeper into the events that have shaped this resilient region and discover more about the struggles and triumphs of its people. Your engagement and perspectives are invaluable as we continue to explore these compelling stories together. Share your comments below and join the conversation